This is what it sounds like when you understand the turnarounds that happen when you are able to develop a teen's emotional IQ.
And so that's what we're hoping for, is somebody that the world no longer has to manage, because that's every one of those kids when they came through our doors.
Welcome to the Turning Winds podcast. My name is Kevin Zundel. Turning Winds has a full continuum of care for teens that could use some critical support clinically and academically. Today, I speak with Carl Baisden to better understand what emotional IQ is and why it is so important for teens to better navigate the world successfully. So, Carl, what I wanted to ask you today was the topic of emotional IQ. And I think
Sure.
really for many of the families in the audience, I think we should just start with the basics. What is emotional IQ?
For me, it's an awareness that you can help an adolescent develop around their emotional processes. Kids are on autopilot as teenagers. So where they're at with their brain development and their life experiences, they just float and they react to the world as life happens to them. But they really cannot intellectualize what's really happening for them. Like, they get stuck on a behavior, but they can't understand that it was because of this feeling that I had that wasn't dealt with appropriately. And so this thing happens. This is a pattern that I have. And so we have this belief here at Turning Winds that the purpose of treatment is not to fix broken people, but to evaluate broken processes, like things that just aren't working well. And one of the things that all of these kids have in common is they have a very minimalistic view of themselves. They have such a little amount of awareness, self-awareness around what makes them tick, what makes life easy, what makes it hard, what emotions are really difficult to deal with. And so instead, these kids, they experience powerful emotions and they just react to the emotion. Our hope is to educate them, to help them develop awareness around their emotional processes, that it is actually their emotional processes that dictates the quality of their life. And so when they're reactive, they lose control, and they lose control of the quality of their life. And so for us, we're all about increasing awareness or emotional IQ, so they have an awareness around what these emotions mean, and then help them develop plans on how they can address those and develop their emotional regulation further. And so that's the big one for me. It's just around awareness. Somebody that's got a high emotional IQ knows what they're feeling and why. And they know the power of those feelings, and they know what they need to do with them.
Right. And I think the word they used, regulation, I think is what we all know that we're working towards, but you almost have to map it out to get to that space and say, okay, what, if you are self-observing, why do I behave in this way I behave in a certain situation? Yeah, I'm acting impulsively because something happened, but why? Is this because something that happened to me in the past and I have to be self-aware of it? Or when I'm confronted with it, no. Hey, stop yourself, give yourself a pause, and then re-enter that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the primary benefits of treatment is you're in a setting that has time and space to really pause when I have those experiences, where I actually have access to resources and qualified professionals that actually can help me make sense of what's happening. Because at 15, 16, 17, they don't make sense of it. They just feel it, and they feel it so powerfully. And so anytime a kid at Turning Winds experiences emotional dysregulation is an opportunity for us. And that's why when kids get into hard spots, or they're struggling, or they're making some poor decisions, yeah, there's risk in that. But I choose to get excited about those opportunities to help those kids become more aware of these processes that hurt them in life. And so if they don't possess the emotional maturity, then they need to develop the emotional awareness so they can bridge the gap in the interim as their brains are continuing to develop. As we know, for males and females both, our frontal lobes don't fully develop until late into our 20s. And so we help them create an awareness and implement processes and tools to help bridge that gap so they don't have to walk around at the mercy of their emotions all day long. That would be brutal. I know it is for me. If I live an emotional life, that's a scary life. And
It is. And even as a parent, it's sometimes we're acting at our worst when it's not about that one situation that we're in right now, but it's about the other 50 situations that led up to this or that were similar to this, and you act out in frustration. So I think sometimes we can't just look at the child, in this case, the teen, and say, let's look at them and examine them. I think something that we can all continue to develop and work on with ourselves. Be kinder to them in that moment. Give them that grace that they really deserve, because again, in theory, our frontal lobes as adults are more developed and we have an advantage. So I think it's up to us to do that. But I wonder, are there other facets of emotional IQ? I think it's easy to focus in on the response of anger, but what about things like self-confidence? I know that personally, if I'm in a place where one thing happened that was bad, and now that's all I can think about. And you can sometimes be frozen completely in that and doubt everything in the world. Are there things like that that you focus on, or others?
Yeah, kids do go through a panic mode when they struggle through emotional processes that they feel like it's quite a failure. At Turning Winds, we quickly try to capitalize on that, and we try to shift the kids' brains into curiosity. Like the empowerment that can come to you if you stop beating yourself up over the weird consequences that you perceive are going to happen, and you start just getting curious about this process that you went through. You'll learn so much. When they understand, that's where confidence comes from. When I know that A and B equals C for me, and I change the equation for myself, that's where real self-worth and confidence comes from, as knowing that I have ownership, that I have some control, and that I actually have the ability to do something different. My favorite way to get curious with kids is that, and any parent listening to this podcast will be able to relate and understand this point. Kids will often say to staff and peers, they will say things like, "You make me so mad. You always do this. You always piss me off when you do this." They're giving ownership to that other person. They're saying, "You do this to me." And in a way, let's talk about a symptom of low emotional IQ. That's it. When I lack the understanding that no, I and I alone am responsible for my emotions. Nobody can make me feel anything. I'm reacting to what these words were that this person just said. And so there's a real-time training that happens with kids when they're having those moments, and that narrative in their head says, this person makes me mad. That's, hold on, pause. No one can do that. So what's the real takeaway that can be offered? If someone can't actually make me mad, but this situation is what triggered this anger response in me, what is it? And so for the kids to be able to fall back on and land on the answer of, it's me. It's actually not. My brain wants to instinctively say, what's the matter with Kevin? He always does this and it pisses me off so much. And when we're in curiosity, we get to say, what's wrong with my brain right now? Like, why is this thing with Kevin? Why does it got me the way that it's got me? Why has it impacted me in that way? If I can get curious and operate in that space, I can become more emotionally aware. I can be smarter with my emotional process. And I just love that word so much, the word of awareness. Like, we're just trying to help. Okay, this thing happened. You became angry. What's this really about? Because I know it's not about those 4 words that a kid say. I read worse words than that on the internet every time I open my web browser. Like, it's not the words. What is it? And so in that space, magical discovery can happen and kids become aware. And so for me, that's what it's all about. It's helping them to know, once I become aware of what things are uniquely challenging for me emotionally and what emotional processes give me, I now am armed with the knowledge that I need to do something about it. But most of these kids, when they come here, lack not some in its entirety. They lack awareness that their emotions are theirs and they belong to them. They actually think the world gives them their emotions. That if they're mad, they should be mad because of my parents and because school's not going well and my parents said no about this. And so they're reacting and using anger as a coping defense mechanism, and it's not serving them well. And then it's ending with all of them in treatment. And yeah, it's a tricky one. It's not, they're a tough group of people to raise their emotional IQ significantly because of where their brain development is. but increasing their awareness around it. And if they lack capability, increasing tools, resources, and even people to bridge the gap of where they're at versus where they should be is really important.
The word that you use that's really sticking with me is the curiosity part of why one is behaving emotionally in the way that they are. Because I think if we use language like I think I did of sort of introspection and self-awareness and things like that, okay, but it's so much more approachable when you say curious in my head. It's okay, that's something I can do, which I really love. And then going back into the confidence idea, in there, I can really see a spectrum where they have to find their spot in the middle. It's very easy to think of, okay, there's situations where you have no confidence at all. But I think of a sign my parents had in their basement when I was growing up that said, hire a teen while they still know everything. And you can see how overconfident they can be. And they'll jump off the roof. They'll think they're right when they no experience in something. How do you look at spectrums like that and have them think of it in that way?
Yeah, I like that because everyone's in different places with different situations. And so a kid that's really good in a situation, there's not much that needs to be addressed there. We're really trying to meet each individual client where they're at with their emotional IQ and their emotional maturity. So we will deal with quite a broad spectrum, but the formula is going to be the same each time. Can we create time and space to pause and afford to have the ability to look at this a little more in depth with qualified people and resources available to me? And so those are our thousands of teaching moments and opportunities a day with these kids. And so we always just try to meet them where they're at.
So when we look at the emotional IQ, that's even though everyone's a little different, I think there's certain things that are a common thread when they come in. And what are the sort of changes? I always hear certain things change at 3 months and then 4 months. And when they're finally ready to take on the world by themselves out there with some support through the alumni program. But what are the stories you think of, or what are those things that you typically see in the beginning that by the end completely different?
Yeah, I like that question a lot. They do progress throughout their stay with this one. And what I'm looking for in the end game, and then we can look at kind of points, what we're really hopeful of at the end of their stay, when they come in, they're dysregulated and they need a significant amount of micromanagement. Like they're so bad at the management of their world that they need a lot of oversight and a lot of management. What we try to replicate throughout the treatment process is as they become skillful, as they get good at tools, that we start stepping down the management of that person. At the end of their stay at Turning Winds, we would really love to have what appears to be a self-managing human. Like, I now have this management. I'm aware of the problems. I'm aware of where I'm a little loose, where I need a little extra help. But they're going to be able to self-manage, to self-intervene, to recognize I'm not doing well. I need more of this. That's the ideal situation. I just got done sending a kiddo home on Tuesday, and he got to the point where he's a good self-manager. And so a lot of his transition work was done by him. Oh, I foresee this being a challenge with these kind of peers. I don't do good. Because of that, I need to put this structure in place and this structure in place and this structure in place. That'll keep me safe and it'll keep me moving forward. And so he's a kid that didn't need prompting on that didn't need us to manage that process. He could see the problems and he could see what he needed to be there as a resource to help him with it. I think that's what we're trying to get to. 3 months into their stay, they're slightly better, right? They're starting to manage. Some of the repetitive things that we've had to hit over and over again are starting to stick. And now they're starting to manage those things. A good example might be language. I might have a kid coming in here cussing like a sailor. And through a repetitive process of redirection and correction hundreds of times over, 3 months in, this kid might have a better self-awareness and ownership and discipline around that he or she has developed. 6 months in, 50-50. And again, right up to the end, where it's now you don't even need 50% management. Now we're sending you home as a person that says, hey, if you have basic structure and discipline and rules and expectation, you're good at managing yourself if the roadmap's ahead of you. And so that's what we're hoping for, is somebody that the world no longer has to manage, because that's every one of those kids when they came through our doors were chaotic and unmanageable and needed a fairly intense setting to get ownership, to get back in the driver's seat of their process.
If this helps you understand why emotional IQ development is a priority at Turning Winds, I highly encourage you to give them a call to discuss your situation at 800-845-1380. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to help you understand how to help your team. There's also a wealth of resources available to you on their website at turningwinds.com.